Thank you for joining today. We're going to talk about, really learning how to tell your outcome story to drive more revenue. And a lot of my clients are tech founders, and many of them are in either the healthcare space or the cybersecurity space. Although I do work with, SaaS companies and companies like managed security companies, throughout the nation. But today we're going to really talk about, how to convert more pipeline, how to create more interest with buyers in an effective way versus just trying to increase numbers of outreach dials, right? And those kind of older tactics that I think are just dying on the vine. So to start off with, I have a few numbers that are a little staggering. 400 billion, if you can guess what that number may be, is actually the projected number of what the cybersecurity market is going to be by 2026. 2026. It's weird to say that number. It doesn't feel like we're going to be there soon, but it's right around the corner. And so when we start to look at the total addressable market of some of these large tech type of, industries, it gets to be really crazy when you start to think, well, how am I going to slice that up, right? The other number that's really staggering is 2,180, and that is the current number of actual vendors in a market like cybersecurity, so a complex technology market, just headquartered here in the US, and I think the global numbers are closer to 3,600. The number 200 is staggering because I had a client once tell me that was a C-level, I think he was a CISO actually, and he said, Amy, this is the number of calls I get every day. And I said, you mean like on your cell phone? He's like, on my cell phone, on my desktop, like all day long, I get calls from vendors, and of course I don't answer them, right? So buyers are certainly buying in a different way, and we need to stay ahead of that. But what happens when you say, well, gosh, my pipeline has grown before, but now it's not. I'm not getting qualified leads. I might be getting initial meeting interest, but it's not converting to anything meaningful for my business, right? So we kind of have to peel back the layers. We have to kind of look at, for everybody, everybody's in a different situation. But if you're, looking at, the process, you're kind of looking at, okay, we've got initial inquiry, got initial interest, right, from buyers. Then we want to get them to the next stage, which would obviously be an in-depth conversation, getting to know their business, otherwise known as discovery, and then getting them into an action that is engaging within the sales process. And if you are a SaaS customer or, any kind of technology where any kind of demoing or solutioneering, I should say, needs to happen, then that might be a next step. And we start to look at the pipeline in these different stages because we have to figure out what is happening, where's the disconnect. And it always goes back to knowing who your buyer is. If there's a breakdown in inquiry to discovery meetings not being converted at the right clip, then we need to really think about, well, are we asking the right questions? Maybe we're just asking really ineffective questions. Maybe we're targeting completely the wrong buyer. So I oftentimes will tell early stage tech founders, you have to know your buyer inside and out. And you have to do the market research to validate you are on top of knowing that buyer every 6 to 12 months. More than likely 12 months, just based on, startups can't necessarily do this every 6 months based on bandwidth. But you really have to understand, things like, how is my buyer buying? What are their pain points? Obviously, that's a big one. But what are their values? What are they really looking for in partnerships? What is kind of the average person in this particular role? What are their characteristics and personality traits? Obviously, everyone's different, but what are some of the commonalities that we can bring out? And then we start to really understand our buyer. And that's so important because oftentimes when we're having issues with these kind of things, we have to go back and really ask ourselves if we're making those relevant connections or not. So knowing your buyer, knowing where they are, I've, certainly found, I think we're all on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still a big one out there to connect with buyers, however, very noisy. Clubhouse is extremely noisy, however, can be very effective in some small groups. Twitter the same, but are you following your customers and understanding, where they're picking up content, because that can really help you align your message. Are you calling them and doing the market research, right? Are you calling them and asking them what is happening? What is their experience as a C-level? What is their experience as a founder of a company? What is their experience in the middle of a security operations center? Going to, pick up the phone at all different levels and really just forming relationships and asking them about their role, their frustrations, things that they really like. Just getting to know them and doing that work is so, so important. So as we think about how to align our message, then it's really important to, create the right message, right? And I think we're all really, really sick of LinkedIn becoming this spam inbox, if you will. I get messages all day ever since I switched, over to being a founder. Of course, people are selling to me and trying to just automate messages. And I cannot tell you how much I preach to people, please don't buy the automated messages, just don't do it. If you're in a specific technology field, it doesn't work. If you're trying to sell complex technology, there may be things that you can, at the very high level, if you're a very big company, there may be some things that you can automate, through LinkedIn automation that will open a door to an initial conversation. But overall, if you're an early stage company, which is who I work with, please stay away from it, because it takes out the personal approach to it. So this is an example of where I got a message from somebody trying to sell patient communication software. They more than likely picked me up because I have a big background in healthcare IT sales. I've got those keywords on my profile. And so it must have just pulled from healthcare, and they assumed that this would be an okay message, but it's not. And so it ends up being spammy, and it's just not valuable. And it puts a really bad taste in everybody's mouth, when LinkedIn was really designed to be a valuable platform and still has a lot of value to it. And so it just lacked, the right target audience, and the sales copy also made assumptions. So we never want to make assumptions that we know anything about our users and our buyers until we actually ask them, because they're all individual. The prospecting structure that I think really works, if you're going to go about and do some cold prospecting, which at some point in your business you're going to definitely have to do, is I think using this structure where you find a relevant, something of relevancy that you can connect with. So I really think less is more. I don't think reps should do like 100 dials a day and 60 outreaches or whatever, because the problem with that is that if it's a number, it is a numbers game in a way. But if you are actually strategically targeting your ideal customer profile, you are going to be able to find pieces of relevant information that will convert your cold outreach at a higher rate than just blanketing, a particular territory, or just making an assumption that you're going to go down a vertical and just call everybody that's in a 200 bed hospital or larger, right? So finding that piece of relevance in the first sentence is key, because people are only going to read the first two sentences. And I think, acknowledging a peer role, if you can, to even boost the credibility of the relevancy is really good. And it helps you create that relatability that is so important. And then within the first, I say 3 sentences here, but honestly, I think even in the first 2, I think it can be really valuable to have your call to action up really close to the top of your copy, because that's what people are reading. They're consuming on their phone. They're managing, incoming data all the time from Slack, their phone, etc. All of them, they're just getting hit all day long with this stuff. So the more that you can have your call to action at the top, that is critical. And then, of course, as you go along in your message, I think having a nice message describing how you're going to be able to, attempt to transform their business or transform the conversation, some sort of transformation story within the body of your message is going to be critical as well, so that they can see, oh, this person really is reaching out for a valuable reason. They want to understand our business and help us grow and transform. Transformation sells, widgets do not sell, SKUs do not sell. Long-term relationships are critical to the growth of your business. So that's the power really of LinkedIn. And I think it's also really important to know that there's a good cadence that you can, establish within these platforms to leverage the technology to your advantage. So, I think, using like a Crunchbase or some of those intelligence tools is awesome. We should be tech-powered sales organizations and tech-powered founders as well. I think that's great to focus in on your ideal client. And then when you get to finding who the people are that you need to connect with, then go to LinkedIn, send a connection request with a personal note of why you want to connect. Do not just send a connection request that is blind with no context. You may get lucky and they may connect with you, but they will probably never respond to you because you didn't have that piece of context and relevancy in your initial request. Then you want to take a few minutes to do your research on why you want to connect with this person so that you can come across authentically. This is an example of how I connected with a CISO of a global Fortune 100 company. This guy is over a huge team. I think they're over 5 billion in revenue, very large team. And I could have spent months and years probably trying to work bottom up or mid-range and getting stuck with mid-level managers. But instead I just said, I want to take a risk and see if he'll respond to me. You never know. And so I did. But what I did before I reached out to him was I noticed that he had all over his LinkedIn. He was definitely very proud about a book that he wrote, as he should be. And so I picked up a copy of the book. It was, on Amazon, had it delivered to my house like later that day or the next day. And, it was an easy read. It was like 80 pages. And I just kind of went through it because it was really good for me to do anyway, because of the line of work I was doing. And then I mentioned that to him. I said, like, hey, I really appreciated this piece of your book. And you could do the same thing with an article. You could do the same thing with a post that somebody has, and just using that as a relevant piece of information. And then my call to action was, hey, I want to compare notes with you and discuss some challenges in security operations with you. It was not, hey, I want to sell to you, or hey, do you have budget? Can you buy? It was, I want to compare notes. It wasn't asking him to demo anything or anything like that. It was like, I want to connect as a peer. So how do we really tell the transformational story? And this is something that a lot of my clients are working on as, they're coming from technical roles, now maybe founders, now maybe, founding a team of and starting to hire for sales because they've, really found proven market fit. But now that they have found their swim lane, they say, okay, now we need to really pump up the pipeline. And this is where the magic happens. When you can tell the transformational story, but you have to understand what your ideal client's pain is, right? You have to understand some of the pain points, and this is kind of fun to list initially until you get this into your repertoire, like, day in and day out. But list the pain, list the desired feelings that that your clients have told you in those market research calls that you have done. And then you're going to use this little formula. And this little formula goes like this. I help, or you could say our company or whatever, I help blank go from being blank to blank so that they can blank. Let's peel that out. Let's peel that off a little bit. So if I was talking to, and this example is in security, but if I was talking to a security leader, a lot of times they have lack of budget, lack of support. They don't feel supported, right? They feel kind of lost. So if I was to apply this formula to it, our company partners with CISOs, same thing as saying I help. Companies partners with CISOs like you from going from being frustrated due to a lack of budget, and we're going to help them feel supported so that they can gain the necessary resources to support the highest security posture, right? I'm speaking directly to this person. And this can help convert some of your clients into, showing them like, hey, I want to know more about that. So then, they might say, well, I want to know more. And so therefore you can tell them about different client stories, case studies, statistics from your company, or just say, hey, I would love to share that with you, but let's get together for coffee, or whatever the case might be. Another one that I did here was, overloaded with tools to manage. That's a big pain in IT in general, but especially security operations. So I've got a couple of my clients actually sell and develop software that solves a lot of these problems. So if you're one of those companies, the end users and the leaders that will be making decisions on this, they want to feel like they can operate with transparency, right? They want transparency into what is hitting their network and any malicious activity that might be happening. So in that case, a valuable message could be, many of my clients have expressed how overloaded they feel in managing tools already installed on the network. And I really help security teams go from feeling unsure about their security posture to operating with transparency so that they can sleep at night and report back to the board with confidence, right? That's something that your security leaders aren't doing right now. They're not sleeping at night, and they probably aren't very confident because they're getting attacked right and left. But they want to feel those things. So if you can start your message by explaining how you want to transform their world and connect the dots on the feelings that they want to get to, that can be a big win. So how in the world do we uncover this pain without asking, what is your pain, right? That's like the worst thing now. Well, what is your pain? We never want to ask that directly necessarily. You could, I guess, if you have really good rapport, but I think it can be kind of like that question can shut people down. So instead, I've often found it to be really a good question to just say, hey, you know what? I found that a common frustration for my clients is X. Are you experiencing something similar? And it just gets the conversation going. As you get into, your relationship a little bit and you start to figure out, gosh, they do have pain and I want to discover more, you can then go to the next question, which might be, if we help you solve X, how does that impact your team, right? How does that impact your business? Get them to start quantifying, what does that solution really mean, and get them thinking about it. And a lot of times they'll say, well, gosh, I haven't really thought about that yet, which puts you in a perfect spot because you want to know how they're going to evaluate their own impact. Some companies will, really have to think on that. And so therefore, that during their evaluation process, they may not be quantifying as much as you would hope. And maybe they're just kind of reactively purchasing, but that's a good data point to know. Another great one that I like to ask, especially mid-level managers, but ones that have a lot of influence in the buying decision, are, gosh, if you could have your team stop doing 2 things this quarter to improve business, what would they be, right? How are they evaluating success criteria? Make sure you ask that, because if you don't understand the process, you can't align to it and you can't be helpful. And make sure you understand and validate, not just reading. Sometimes people just want to read reports, like if it's a publicly traded company, they'll pull up reports, which is great research to do before a meeting. But validate with your customer. What are the areas of strategic growth? What conditions have the most disruptive impact on your business? Get them talking about the really big stuff that's like the core of their business and the stuff that's keeping all the managers up at night. How are they minimizing risk to the business? Everybody's business is at risk right now. How are they minimizing it? Even my own business, you have to think about, those things in those terms. So if you're talking to a leader or anybody with decision power, they're going to be able to start quantifying these things. And on the right, you'll see impact on the business, right? And, are they increasing income? Are they going to be, you know, are they going to be looking at, you know, savings? Maybe they're really, if they're budget constrained, you better be showing them savings, right? Or increased productivity, all of those things that you might put into an actual, you know, ROI and those kind of things that you can show when you quote and things like that. But really make sure that, you know, they are putting and telling you what the impact is on the outcome when you partner or when they solve the problem. More importantly, when they solve the problem, because you as a partner or you as the technology provider, doesn't matter really who you are, they're going to have to solve this problem. So how are they going to do it? And what does that outcome look like? What are they expecting to get on the other side? What does life look like for them on the other side, right? And that's where you're going to tease out a lot of really good information that you're going to be able to craft into messages that are very personable to your buyer throughout all of these stages. And it helps you convert a higher number of inquiries to discovery calls. It helps you convert more discovery calls into, you know, actionable next steps like a demo, or maybe you go directly to quoting if you're a service-based business, you know, putting a statement of work together and things like that. And then of course you go into negotiation. So I hope that gives some clarity. I'm gonna do another video probably next week around actual discovery questions that you can ask, but it's really important to think about being brave enough in your questioning to ask about the impact of their business. And that's where a lot of people miss the mark sometimes.